what did you do as a farmer, and what was it like? Was it difficult? Was it hard? And why, if it was difficult, why was it difficult?
Beautiful. Yeah, being a migrant farm worker, for me, we did everything from planting the crop to harvesting and packaging the crop. And in the greenhouse where I worked, there are lots of different tasks from the time you plant the crop to harvesting it, to harvest and packaging it. There are lots of different activities to be done. For me, my main activities were de-leafing and picking. And I need to say, both being a migrant farm worker, both my living and my working conditions were very, very difficult. In terms of my living conditions, I lived in a bunkhouse with 62 other colleagues. Well, 61 other colleagues. I was the 62nd person. 62 of us.
62 in a
62
bunkhouse?
in a bunkhouse.
What is a bunkhouse? Can you describe it?
Yeah, beautiful. I can describe a bunkhouse. Yeah. A couple of things is a bunkhouse. We call it a bunkhouse because the beds are bunk beds. What is a bunk bed? It's a two-layer bed. In my home country, it's only children who sleep in bunk beds. When I go to a Canadian home, when I go to a house in Canada, if there's a bunk bed in the house, it's only children who sleep in a bunk bed. But when I go to the farm, it's adults. Migrant workers, they put in bunk beds. So in our home countries, children sleep in bunk beds. In Canadian homes, children sleep in bunk beds, but on the farm, adults sleep in bunk beds. It's like they treat migrant workers is like they treat us as children. So we call it a bunk house because it is bunk beds that are in there. And on the farm where I work, there were 8 bedrooms. Each bedroom had 8 people, excepting for one that had 6. And in my room, which is the typical room, there were 4 bunk beds, and there were 8 of us sharing a room. In the kitchen, we had one communal kitchen, meaning everybody used the same kitchen. There were 3 stoves with 16 burners. So imagine 16 burners for 62 of us. So that means everybody could not use the kitchen at the same time. So for me personally, I had to get up really, really early because a lot of the guys, they like to use the kitchen. They like to use the kitchen at night. But me, I went to bed earlier than them. So I would get up earlier. So basically the kitchen was free very, very early in the morning. That was the way I was able to access the kitchen. And for me, being a farm worker, migrant worker, that changed my whole lifestyle because I had to get up early to access the kitchen. So my day started really, really early, and my living condition means not having enough appliances. Nothing was enough. No privacy, not enough appliances, not enough washers, not enough dryers, not enough for the number of workers. The ratio of appliances to workers were very, very difficult. So that made our living conditions very, very difficult. In terms of our working conditions, the basic laws that are there to protect workers in Canada, the laws that are designed to protect workers in Canada, migrant workers are excluded from those laws. And simple things like overtime pay, holiday pay, and so on, we excluded from those laws. In other words, what I want to tell you, DET, that is a migrant worker in Canada. DET. What is DET? D, we are denied a lot of things. From the Constitution of Canada, migrant workers are denied a lot of things. E, excluded. We excluded from a lot of things. The laws that are designed to protect workers in Canada, we excluded from that. And on top of it, we are tied. T is our tie. We are tied to our employer. We have a tied work permit. So let us go over that. Being a migrant worker means I am tied to my employer and denied so many things and excluded from so many things. So basically, being a migrant worker means that you're exploited, and the migrant farm worker program is a recipe for exploitation.
That sounds very sad and very difficult. And
Extremely
especially
so.
if you're also missing family members, and in a way you're tied to a situation where you're there to work, to provide money, to pay and support the family members back home. And in a way it makes it a harder situation to to um to be in, because you can't, because some people say, why don't you just leave, or why don't you just quit?
Yeah,
But it
that's
makes
an
it harder
important
to
question.
quit or to leave,
Yes.
because you also have the needs of a family to support back home, right?
Beautiful. And I would like to draw people's attention to Life, Life, and Death, DEBT. This is a documentary that was made in Jamaica,
Yes,
Life and Death. And,
yes.
and it's important. That really spells out the reality of people in the global south, where that large divide between the developed and the developed countries. And because of Life and Death, we are forced to go through the fire. What do I mean by that? We are forced to go through difficult living and working conditions in Canada, because back home we have even more difficult situations where we cannot get stable employment to support our families. Difficult conditions back home forced us to come to Canada. When we get to Canada, we face even more difficult conditions. But will you speak up? Will you speak up and fight and stand the risk and face the risk of being deported, being sent back home? Where when you go back home, you're going back to a country where unemployment is very high and you still have a family to support. So we are literally forced to go through these difficult conditions. And I like to put it this way: we are sandwiched between a rock and a hard place. In our home countries, difficult conditions push us to be migrant workers. Come to Canada, difficult working and living conditions. So we are forced between a rock and a hard place. At the end of the day, knowing that we have a family to support, we want to know at the end of the pay week, the pay cycle, that we have money to support our families.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to compare that quickly to DDT. DDT. You know what Canadians said? We cannot deny Europeans' rights. We cannot deny them rights. We cannot deny them freedom. We cannot tie them to a farm. That's what Canadians said to Europeans, people from Europe. We cannot DDT. We cannot deny them rights. We cannot deny them freedom. We cannot tie them to a farm. But when it comes to people from the global south, DET. We can deny them rights. We can exclude them and we can tie them.
Mm-hmm. So where do the people that work on the farms, what countries do they come from?
Generally, we call these countries the global south. A lot of these workers are Spanish workers from Mexico, Guatemala, and so on. And a lot of the English workers are from Jamaica. Jamaica is the giant when it comes to the English-speaking workers. To me, I would say maybe 90% of the English-speaking workers are from Jamaica. Right now, the government of Canada, they've expanded the program, and literally a farmer can take workers from literally anywhere in the global south. Okay. And right now, it's not uncommon to hear workers from Thailand, from Cambodia, Vietnam. The program have been expanded greatly.
How many years did you work as a migrant farm worker?
Yeah, I did it for 4 years or 4 seasons. 2012, 8 months, go back home. 2013, 8 months, go back home. 2014, 8 months, go back home. 2015, 8 months, but then I applied to live in Canada.
Okay, so when you come here, then you're living here and working here for 8 months. Do some of the migrant workers stay longer? Do they have a longer work terms or shorter work terms?
Let me refer to the program that brought me to Canada. The program that brought me to Canada is called the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program. That particular program started in Jamaica in 1966. Under that program, a migrant worker can come to Canada for maximum of 8 months.
Oh,
Some workers on that program, they can come to Canada for as little as 6 weeks. Now, pretty soon these workers will be coming to Canada. These workers will come for 6 weeks. They come to harvest apples, usually in the month of September, October. They come for 6 weeks to harvest apples. Let me compare. There's another program where the workers can come to Canada on a 2-year contract, and it's a slightly different program. So these workers, they work in Canada year round. And especially in the greenhouses where there's always work year round, it's very common to find workers who want 2-year contract.
And what kind of crops did you grow when you were on the farm? Or what kinds of crops did you plant or harvest on the farm?
There were tomatoes, and organic sweet peppers, and there were many varieties of tomatoes. Several, not hundreds. There were hundreds, different varieties, different colors, different shapes, different sizes, different colors. A wide variety, like it was like a continent of tomatoes. Lots and lots of tomatoes.
Yeah, I've seen one of the farms, and I know that those fields can be vast.
Yeah.
And what I was also surprised by was the fact that I always presumed machines did a lot of the picking, but because of the nature of the fruits, they can't be picked by a machine. They have to be picked by hand.
In the greenhouse, generally tomatoes, the way tomatoes they produce a whole set of tomatoes in a cluster.
Right.
A lot of tomatoes in a cluster, and all of the fruits, they do not ripen at the same time. And the way they harvest the tomatoes, generally, they would harvest ripe ones. So that is why manual harvesting is done, because all the tomatoes do not ripen at the same time. So you harvest them manually. So that is one reason why migrant workers are needed, because tomatoes do not all ripen at the same time, and they're harvested manually.
And what do you want young people, Canadian young people, to know, or what do you want young readers to know when they learn about migrant workers, either through your book, Harvesting Freedom, my book, Malaika Carnival Queen, or even on the news, because there's been some more news recently about some migrant workers. So what do you want young people to know, and what can they do about the situation?